So guys, Wargaming have only gone and done it, and they have released the Object 752 into the game, and today's video on World of Tanks Modern Armour is going to be looking at the tank. Of course, we're going to have to look at the equipment setup. We're going to get through all of the information, what the tank is good, is it worth actually completing the season pass to be able to get this, and yeah, give us a first look and first impressions as to the Object 752. Obviously we're going to be playing some gameplay to actually show you what the tank is like in the game. I can't say that the gameplay is going to be the most stellar performance, but of course you'll have to wait and see to the end of the video where we get through that. But first, before we do any of that, let's have a look at the equipment that you're going to be wanting to put on this tank. And before we actually select the equipment, of course, when you are selecting your equipment in your tanks, you need to make sure that you pick the right statistics to be able to determine which equipment slot you're going to be using. So, first things first, what do I notice about the tank? Well, it is the accuracy and the aim time being very, very poor in this thing. Now of course that's because it's an autoloader. Yes, a 3-shot autoloader with 390 alpha damage at tier 9, making this one of the highest kind of clip potential at tier 9. I'd say you're looking at just under 1200, you're in fact 1170 alpha damage with this autoloader. So yes, you will be able to pump out the damage very quickly. Now in order to actually reduce that, of course you're going to be wanting to put gun stabilizer. This is one of the most influential perks that you can possibly put on any autoloader, and that is basically so that you can hit those shots as and when you are reloaded in this tank. Now, moving on, what else do you want to be putting on the tank? Well, of course, because you don't have the accuracy and you don't have the DPM traditionally with your autoloaders, you're going to be wanting to put on improved ventilation in this tank, and so that's exactly what we are going to be doing. We've run out of money, of course, because yeah, I've been doing this a long while, swapping and changing crews and putting different kind of stuff throughout all of the tanks, so we're going to have to take one off during this just to pay for a next equipment slot. But whilst we're doing that, of course, what you want to be looking at next is whether or not you want to be going for a spotting build, and considering the tank only has 380 meters base vision range, you're probably going to want to boost that up. So either you decreased your still concealment, so you're a bit more stealthy, or you do take that coated optics to be able to get that assistance damage, and that is exactly the route that we're going to be doing, because we're not going to be playing this like a passive hidden tank at the back of the map. We are going to be playing pretty aggressive within the gameplay. Don't know if it's going to work 110%, but because this tank has a little bit of armor, not saying it has, you know, the best in the game by far, but for a medium tank, yeah, you're probably going to be able to bounce a couple of rounds, although I guess it depends on where the people hit you, because your turret on this thing is fairly okay. You haven't got awful turret armor, although it is fairly flat, meaning that, you know, if people have those high penetration but high penetration rounds, they're probably going to be able to go through the front of your turret. You can see it is very unangled, it's not very sloped at the front, which is kind of the key weakness, I guess, of the turret cheek. So that's kind of where the problems lie with the turret. In terms of the hull armour, however, what you do have is this very boat-shaped hull. You've also got that pretty much the same as the Object 257 if you've ever played that tank, where you have that really hard area where you can actually not pen the tracks or pen and damage through the tracks. It's very difficult with this tank because of course the tracks cover pretty much a very slim bit at the bottom, so penning and tracking these tanks is very difficult, and so what you might want to be doing is just wiggling back and forward with this to be able to avoid getting hit as much with the tank. Now this tank itself is obviously a Soviet tank. It has the 122, you've also got that turret, and you have a fairly meaty, or I say meaty, but it really is kind of underrated or not very well balanced, I don't think, because the horsepower of the tank means that your power to weight ratio in this tank is not very good, and so yeah, you're going to be very mediocre getting up to that top speed. You obviously only have a maximum speed of 40 kilometers an hour, so that's kind of the limiting factor with this kind of medium tank. It's a strange one. It's It's not a traditional medium tank, obviously, as well as having that autoloader, making it even less traditional. So yeah, you're going to have to potentially make sure what you're doing in this tank, locating yourself on the map, you do it in plenty of time. So hopefully I'll be able to show you exactly how that works within the game. Whether or not that will actually happen in practice, I don't know. But yeah, I think it will be a good introduction to autoloaders for those of you who maybe haven't played high tier autoloaders, because essentially they're quite fun to play. They are probably my more favoured class within the game, and so I think that that's probably where you'll enjoy it, and especially considering this tank is pretty much free with the season pass, because yes, you can get it from season rank 100, I believe, at the minute. At least that's what I'm thinking. Yes, there it is, but you do have to purchase the season pass, which costs you 2,000 gold, but considering you get your gold back and you get a premium tank that's tier 9, yeah, it's pretty good. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into some gameplay and see how this thing actually plays in the game, and most importantly, see whether or not you should be purchasing that season pass to get this tank. Right then, after whacking in a commander, we are starting off the game on Mountain Pass. So we're going to be having a look at how this tank actually fares within the game. Is it actually overpowered? Is it one of those wargaming premium tanks that's just going to stomp the matchmaker as soon as everyone manages to get their hands on it? Well, from first opinion, having a 27.62 rate or reload, meaning that you're going to be having to wait a long time to be able to get out your 1100 alpha damage, meaning your total effective DPM is probably nearing that lower end of the medium tanks at tier 9. Although, to be honest with you, you're not really a medium tank. You're not going to be able to bounce very much with this tank, so don't go thinking that you will. It's basically a heavy is essentially what this tank is. It certainly isn't a medium tank that you're going to be bouncing very much with. Don't know why the T57 heavy is now going, but what we will try and do is just avoid trying to take any hits now, because we can just move back a little bit. We're going to then progress onto the opponents that are in front of us. Unfortunately, we only managed to get one shot of damage, but we did high roll, meaning that we are now on 400 alpha or damage worth of hit points, whatever you want to call it. Basically, we are now starting to rack up a little bit of damage. Is it the most that you've ever seen? No, it's definitely not, but what we can do is, playing against some of these more heavily armoured tanks that we're coming up against, we can consistently put out damage on them. You can see right there, we penned a full shot of damage, and with this tank, luckily, what you actually notice is that you can bounce quite a few rounds in this thing. You also have the penetration with your premium rounds, and yes, I think that this does get a PCR rounds as premium with 300mm of penetration, meaning that you will be more than capable of putting out damage against opponents that you may have otherwise not been able to. So what we will try and do here is put one more into the Centurion, which we don't manage to do, and now it's just time to kind of relocate backwards as far as possible, because we can put this big giant rock in between us and the opponents, and then now it is just time to, yeah, essentially relocate, put out some shots of damage as and when we possibly can. Not that that's going to be very easy to do when we're getting hit like we are. Now, Quillin now moving up. What we have decided now is that we have to commit to this flank, because if we don't, we're going to be able to get overrun by the opponent's tanks, and so we have to start picking them off. If we don't make a stand here, and if we try to retreat, we're going to take quite a lot of hits that we essentially wouldn't be able to deal anything back to. So at this moment in time, you know, our team are supporting us on the hill. We're pretty much reloaded against the opponents that we're going to be facing, and so yes, we can put out that damage very easily into the opponents that have been kind of progressing towards us. So yeah, there we go. Already we have racked up a ridiculous amount of damage, really, when it comes down to the amount of effort that we've put in. You know, we've literally moved up to one flank. We've only taken one hit in return, and that was the most recent one, which we probably waited a little bit too long. But What we do have now is the AMX 1390, who's decided he's now going to try and rush us, but what we don't enjoy is when those pesky tanks decide that they're apparently better than everyone else. So we put one more into him. What we can do then is, for some reason, he's been in a numpty, so we're going to take him out. Then we're going to be able to reload, hopefully, or at least partially reload before the next barrage of or onslaught of enemies decide to progress. How much hit points are they all on? Well, we've got an E50 on pretty much nothing, so he's a one shot for us to be able to take out. We've got a nice TD supporting us up there, and it is a tortoise, meaning that, yes, it has the DPM to cover our reload very, very nicely, so it's worked out an absolute treat with him up there. So a big, big thank you to Modish Parody. Yeah, really did help me out here in this scenario. And we've managed to bounce 2,000 damage nearly, which is actually pretty ridiculous. But what we are trying to do now is just, because the Conqueror's over-angling now, we can pen him, or at least we were trying to. But yeah, that was a really bad trade actually. I made an awful mistake. What we're going to do now, just pull back. There's no point in facing him 1v1. Tortoise is now moving up. He's on full health, so it's time to trade a little bit of his health as opposed to just mine solely. So yeah, I think what we have to do now is support the Tortoise, because one-on-one against the Conqueror is not going to be particularly very fun for him. We have to be careful with our own hit points, because we are a potential shot away from being killed by the Conqueror itself. And so yeah, it's very, very difficult. Hopefully the Tortoise will actually just be able to finish him off. A little bit wary as to you know, pushing round, and maybe the Conqueror will just decide to take us out of the game, which wouldn't be that good, and by the time we actually progress over there, we're probably not going to be able to make much of an impact anyway. But nonetheless, 4,200 damage into this game. What can we do from this point? Well, we do only have 400 hit points left. We're up against a Grill 15, an E100, an E75 and a VKB, which is fantastic news because all of them have more alpha damage than I actually have hit points, which is, yeah, not so fun. Let's hope that the enemy tanks are on less hit points than we would expect them to be, because probably, most likely, some of those tanks are going to be on a lot more hit points than we'd probably want within this game. What we've now noticed is that the E75 is, oh god, Gorilla's over there. He did manage to hit us, which is unfortunate. I shouldn't have gone back, to be honest. For some reason, I thought that he'd fired already. I don't know what that was. Maybe it was just me thinking that an explosion or my own gun smoke had thought that he'd actually fired anyway. We should have pulled back, shouldn't have bothered advancing, but maybe, just maybe, this Tortoise can pull the bag out of... yeah, no, it's never going to happen. They've got like 4,000 damage combined, let alone the Gorilla, who's got even more. Yeah, it's probably going to be an unfortunate win for us. I really shouldn't have lost all of those hit points to the Conqueror there, which kind of led to the downfall of me within that game. I didn't play the best there at the end, but considering I didn't even play that well, 4,200 damage and 2,000 blocked, you can expect to block some damage within this tank. Of course, it is brand new, which means that you're more likely going to be bouncing a couple more, as people don't understand where you've got to fire at these tanks that we're in. So yeah, it's a little bit of kind of first time tanker gameplay, so I think it's been an interesting ride. We'll play one more, see how the tank fares, and maybe some different matchups where we're not against those tier 10s that can kind of just auto aim us or put reliable damage straight into us. So that is kind of something I am looking forward to. A big props to this Tortoise, however, for getting 5,000 damage within this game. He's been doing an absolute trick against some of these. Maybe, just maybe, he will be able to pick up that last bit of damage. I think we're going to stay and see how well he can do up against this E100. If he fires the premium, we're going to be looking very, very nice against him. But yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see, and maybe, just maybe, if this guy does decide to do something within this game after bouncing the Gorilla shot there, he's made a mistake. He should have gone for the E100. I don't know why he didn't turn for him, because now he's round and the Gorilla's going to now finish him off. And that is our hopes of winning this game all ended right here. Anyway, moving forward onto our own game, it's going to be interesting to see how we can fare in the next matchup. We aren't going to look at too much of the post-game stats. We'll probably come fairly high within the team. Tortoise probably took the top spot. Yes, he did. So let's get into the next one, see how well we can kind of show off this tank even more. Anyway, what do you guys think of the Object 752? Is it a tank that you've really enjoyed playing? Is it a tank that you want to see more of? Do you want to potentially grind your way to get the tank? Is it worth it in your opinion? All of those sort of questions I think I really want to see in the comment section down below. It's been interesting seeing what you thought of the monster, which was yesterday's video, or the creature even, which is the brand new Monster Hunter tank, the one with the big derp cannon basically at tier 7. It's got one of those Sturm Tiger tank line guns on it on a Panzer 5, which is of course the Panther. Yeah, it's a very interesting tank to be able to play, and of course leave your opinions on that, or just go and check out that video if you're interested to see how that one plays from this new season. Now, probably a better map for our tank highway. We have some pretty decent avenues that we can go down in this medium tank. I keep saying it's a medium, but realistically it is a heavy tank. You aren't going to be able to get anywhere particularly fast like a medium. The 40 kilometers an hour top speed is just a blatant lie. Yes, you may be able to get up to 40 kilometers an hour, but not consistently. It's going to take you a year to be able to get there. Maybe you want to put the speed boost equipment within this to boost up that horsepower to be able to get up to the 40 kilometers an hour faster, but to be honest with you, because you probably want the view range, you also want the ventilation that the tank has, and also you want the accuracy. It's very difficult to pick a slot that I would rather have that speed boost in. So yeah, it's a very difficult situation if you are looking to try and change up the kind of equipment slots that you're going to be using in this tank. So think about it, weigh it up yourself, make your own opinions, and of course if you check the comment section, I'm sure many of you will probably say about your preference. Maybe you want to do it differently, and of course that's where World of Tanks has that differentiation and has the difference in kind of loadouts and stuff like that, and I think that is always something I've enjoyed within World of Tanks, and picking different bits of equipment that maybe make up these novel builds that no one really thinks of until someone comes along and just completely breaks the game with a ramming build on a Panzer 5-4 or an Alf Klarung's Panzer Panther, which is something I absolutely love. Anyway, moving forward, what do we want to do? Well, I thought I was auto-aiming. That was a bad mistake. There is someone in the back, so we are going to pull back now. We did take one hit. We're probably maybe taking another one, but luckily we didn't. We're going to keep wiggling the turret to avoid taking any more shells. We're going to reload now. This T95 for some reason is now pushing up, which is really annoying because we could have got one more shot off of him before we would have inevitably had to reload. Anyway, 15 seconds left. This is where the tank is very, very tedious, and where you're going to be finding 90% of your game after unloading your shells. And if you don't make the shells count that you're firing, yes, I could say that with every single tank in the game, but this one really does negatively get impacted if you don't fire and pen all of your shells that you're firing with something like this. But luckily, having said that, we managed to pen every single round within that clip and finish that guy right off within this game. Now, progressing on highway, what I always find people tend to do on this map is they always aggressively go down on the left hand side, which is definitely not something I would ever really recommend. Going aggressively on the left hand side leads to a lot of the campers that are on the other side. You'll see that the STRV's just picked up a kill for the enemy team. You'll see that a lot of our team that have pushed down on that left hand flank are now starting to get picked off very, very easily, and that is not a uncommon occurrence within highway, so you have to be careful. What I tend to do when I'm going to be super aggressive or I'm going to push on this map is I tend to go down into the dip, which is straight ahead of us. Obviously we may take 1 or 2 hits maybe potentially when progressing down here, but it's not the end of the world. You're going to be able to get some hit points back. You're going to be able to potentially spot for your team. You're going to have some damage back in return. So that is where this this tank becomes really, really nice. And this is where this strategy works out the best. Once I'm in this position, I am pretty much safe because now I have the hill in front of me, and unless enemy tanks decide that they are going to be super aggressive and try and take us out aggressively, which is probably the best thing to do, because from this position I can just reliably poke this ridge, use the vision range that this tank gets, and get assistance damage, which is also something that is always nice when you're playing in these tanks like this, where you're in an autoloader, so for the rest of the time when you're reloading you haven't got much to do, so you might as well be an active scouter where you are trying to get as much scouting damage as possible, and that assistance damage to be able to increase the amount of, I guess, not damage that you'll be dealing within the game, but I guess how much of an impact you can have, because not always is it awful, not always will you have the ability to unload shells into your opponents like we are having here, where we can just put round after round into the cupola of the tortoise, and now we're just in a position where we can just advance. It's that easy with this tank. And this is probably where this tank as a first auto-loading tank will be the perfect matchup for you, especially if you're a new player. I think that there is definitely precedent for tanks like this within the game for new players as well as old ones. I'm not saying that this is going to be a terrible tank for anyone that has played a little bit within the game. I'm just saying that this will definitely be one that you want to keep an eye on if you are a new player, and certainly purchasing it for 2,000 gold in the season pass is going to be probably one of the best things that you do within the game, especially if you're going to put any kind of time within the next 6 weeks on the game that the season is currently out for. Obviously it depends on the time that you're watching this video. If you're future selves, I guess, a long time down the road, and you're just wanting to see how this tank can play with the early opinions that you're going to be seeing as part of this review, then I guess it will somewhat help. That was not a shell that we want to see. We've got the Llewellyn now, but what we might have to do is just go balls deep and just ram. Yeah, we didn't get the opportunity, so I guess we'll have to get the batch at 155.58 potentially with the reload, but we are having to wait a long time now. Can we get the last shot of damage into him before he gets taken out? Will we? No, we don't, unfortunately, but it was a decent game showcasing what the Object 752 can do within the game, and I think that both the replays combined show you the best and kind of worst scenarios, how well this tank can pick up the damage, how pretty much easy this tank is to play. Got the potential to bounce a lot of rounds, you have the assistance potential, you have the damage potential, and yeah, I think overall a pretty balanced and well-rounded tank for you to be able to play. Certainly not one of the worst. Would I recommend it? Yeah, I think for anyone that's interested in playing World of Tanks, if you're interested in autoloaders, definitely this tank is one for you. And there aren't too many tier 9 medium tank autoloaders, other than, of course, the French autoloader, the Charfuteur, which is probably a better tank, to be honest with you. But there we go. Anyway, hopefully you did enjoy this video. If you want to check out other of the Season Pass tanks that got released with this new Halloween season in 2021 World of Tanks, then you can do on screen right now, or check out the update news for the latest Halloween update on World of Tanks. So there we go. Hopefully you did enjoy. Hopefully I'll see you in one of those videos, and thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.